Okay, guys, welcome to this webinar on the School Workforce Census for 2018. What I'm going to do is take you through the various different steps of producing the return and try and share key information around the data items to be collected. If you do have any questions, please just type them in the chat box, and without further ado, I'll just get going. So in terms of documentation, all the documentation you'll need is up on the OSMIS website. That's at www.osmis.co.uk. So you click that button there, that's going to take us through to the OSMIS site. And from there, we've got a little button that takes us to Workforce Census. And then you can either say whether you're doing a full or partial return. So this morning's session is focused on partial returns. You click that and all the relevant documentation is here. So the DfE's documentation, a quick guide to producing the census return within SIMS, so partial return is there. We talk a little bit about service agreements. We've got the CAPTA guidance, the DfE guidance, which is chapter and verse on what information should be recorded and what the criteria for producing that information is. We've got the errors and resolutions document and a small PowerPoint, which is very similar to the one I'm going to go through now. We've got a data checking report, which you can run off. It's actually version 4.1 now, Helen. I've had QTLS and the EYT to the report there, which are new data items. We've got the webinars we're going through now. If you do find you've got any problems doing it, by all means, put yourself on a remote support session. Helen's sat there ready and waiting for your call. And we've got a series of those. We'll be publishing some more dates as they fill up. If you're really struggling and you want somebody to assist with the workforce census, maybe the staff issues, by all means, fill in the request for consultancy form and we'll get one of our highly trained operatives out on site to assist with the production of the return itself. We've got an area for secure data transfer, so once you produce the return, whether you're a Blackburn school, a Trafford school, or indeed an academy, using the DfE Collect system, all the guidance you'll need is all up there. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to this. Oh yes, I'm recording the session. I've already made a bit of a mess of it, but hopefully it'll be available on DVD soon. An introduction to the workforce census. It's the DfE's main source of data on staff payables, turnover and absences, and indeed the deployment of staff according to their qualifications. It informs policy on the DfE on pay and the monitoring of effectiveness and diversity of the workforce, and it's also used by other government departments, local authorities, external agencies, and educational researchers. Accuracy of the data is crucial in making sure that they can make sense of what's going on at the macro level. The submission of the workforce census return is covered by statute, which means that nobody has any option. The schools have to do the return, and staff have to make themselves available to be included within it. They don't have an option to say, you're not submitting my data in this way. Being transparent, providing accessible information to individuals about how you use their information is a key element of GDPR legislation. The most common way to provide the information you need to provide to the data subjects is a privacy notice. We've got a link there to the DfE guidance on that. But basically what you've got to do is provide the subject of the data stuff with information about what data is going to be collected and what it's going to be used for. What's the lawful basis for processing that information, how long you're going to retain it, who you're going to share it with, why is it going to be shared, whether you intend to transfer it to another country, and whether you need to use it for automated decision making or profiling. Most of that is sort of given, and in the case of workforce census, it's really relevant because you've got an imperative to collect and share this information. The workforce census is a collection of a range of information on the school workforce. Much of the information is held automatically by payroll. They know the salary scale points and contracts that the staff work on, so it makes sense to use that. But some elements are only known to the school, things like your vacancies on the census day, your deployment of staff in terms of curriculum and so on. They're only known to the school, and you need to get information both from the SIM system and from the payroll system. The DfE Collect system allows the authority, in many cases, or indeed Collect itself, to be used to stitch together the two halves of this return. So it's key that you've got certain matching fields identical in both the local authority system and your own in order to make that job a little easier. That includes items like the name, the former name, the gender, the NI number, and so on. So what it does, it takes the information from SIMS, the information from the payroll, marries them together. Within Collect, there's actually a matching wizard, so you can say this member of staff, even though I've not quite got the name right, is the same as that member of staff, and it will match them up. But that's something the local authority does in a lot of cases. Key dates for this census collection. Well, we've got the census date itself. The enumeration date is the 8th of the 11th. So that's the 8th of November this year. It's going to collect information on absences from the payroll system in this case, from the 1st of September through to the 31st of August. And it's going to talk about any continuous contracts starting after the 1st of September 2017, which is the date of the last return, up to the date of this one. Okay. Changes to the collection this year. The qualified teacher status box is now gone. So qualified teacher status has now been subdivided into early years specialisms and so on. So the information that was collected last year and you already input has now been removed, and they couldn't infer whether they were early years teachers or post-16 teachers or whatever from that information. So that's gone, and it's been replaced by a series of tick boxes in the professional details tab. Okay, so it's now collected. It's no longer collecting just simply qualified teacher status. It's collecting, are they qualified teachers learning and skills status, which is designation awarded to teachers in FE and post-compulsory education. Are they early years teachers who are delivering the early years foundation stage, or are they just qualified teacher status? Okay, so you'll need to tick those boxes as appropriate. Tick all that apply. So if somebody's got the FE accreditation, put the tick in there. If they're also qualified teacher status, put the tick in there too. Okay, qualification subjects, they are collecting, as they did last year, the first and second subject qualified, but they're no longer ranking them. So it's just saying, you know, they're qualified in this and that. There's no need anymore to require, there's no requirement for you to ask the teacher which was their principal subject. Everything okay with that so far, Helen?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, SIMS permissions. Right, in order to do the return, you need to be a member of the personnel officer and returns manager group in SIMS. If you managed to do it last year, the chances are you're going to be in there. But you set that up in Focus, System Manager, and Manage Users by simply putting yourself into the groups as appropriate. Any problems with that, of course, or any aspect of producing the workforce census return, please do just give us a call. Who are you going to include in the return? This is the most complicated part, and I'm quite tempted to get Helen to sort of speak through this bit, even though she's not seen the slides. Who to include in the return? Right, so it's any teachers and support staff with contracts who are employed by the school via a current contract that has lasted for 28 days or more on the 8th of November. So that's anybody currently working with you, and anybody who's been employed for 28 days or more during the period 1st of the 9th to the 7th of the 11th, 2018. So that's from, so basically it's anybody who's worked there since the 1st of September 2017. That's about right, isn't it? Yeah, right. Or have been employed by the school via a permanent contract or via a contract with a contract end date of at least 27 days after the contract start date. I think that's just reiterating what's above. They're also collecting information about anybody with a service agreement. Now, this is agency teachers, perhaps have been paid through by the checkbook and have been employed by the school via a service agreement for 28 days or more during the same period. All right. So it's basically anybody who's paid to be at the school for 28 days or more any time since the 1st of September 2017. True. Yeah, you get that? Oh, here we go. Susan's got a question. I have a supply site supervisor who will be here for 6 weeks. Do I include him as a service agreement? Is he paid through payroll or is he paid? Let's see. If he's not paid through payroll, yes, you would need to record a service agreement and you would need to collect full data for that member of staff. So all the stuff that you collect for anybody on a contract, you would also need to collect for that individual in order to comply with the requirements of the return. Okay, preparing for the return, right. So there's some stuff you can do in preparation. Sorry, boss. It's payroll, right. So, right, if it's paid on the payroll, then you need to put a tick in the eligible for SWR. Don't enter any service agreement information, but submit the rest of the information for that member of staff, so ethnicity and qualified teacher status and so on. Okay. School level information. Ensure that the school level information in Focus School detail is correct. It's pretty much as per the pupil census return. So if it was right 4 weeks ago, it'll be right now. Okay, but just check that, make sure it's okay. Now, in terms of getting your staff information ready, it's a case of going focus person staff and opening up each member of staff eligible for inclusion within the SWR, making sure they've got a ticket out eligible for SWR, and ensuring that the legal forename and surname, any previous names, date of birth, NI number, match that in the payroll service. Now, Blackburn schools particularly need to make sure that you make the authority's job as easy as possible by ensuring that if either the school system or the LA system is incorrectly recording forename, surname, previous names, gender, date of birth, NI number, you need to make sure that those two are recorded identically in both the payroll system and in SIMS. Now, check your establishment report from the HR team. Make sure that you've both got it right and you both match. Okay. So on the employee details tab, what you're doing, legal forename, surname, previous names, gender, eligible for SWR, date of birth, NI number, ethnicity, any qualifications that you've got recorded in there. And you need to indicate if any day-to-day activities are substantially affected by physical or mental impairment and the nature of such an impairment. That's something that the teacher declares, and it's a rather sensitive matter. It's pretty much down to the schools to determine how you're going to collect that information. But if it is there, then it will get collected by the census return. Anything to add, Helen? It does indeed, yeah. So all the stuff that's going to go up as part of the census return is actually, well, right, the key facts that you've got to confirm with the member of staff are on that checking sheet that I referred to a moment. On the professional details tab, high-level teaching assistant status and the date achieved is required for all contracted teachers, teaching assistants and other support staff who are aged 18 or over if they have HLTA status, whether or not they're employed as such or not. If the member of staff is employed as a TA, whether they might be a qualified teacher, if they're employed as a TA, click the TA status box. Now we come on to our qualified teacher status triumvirate. So we record the qualified teacher status, the teacher learning and skills, and the early years teacher status by simply ticking the boxes. And bear in mind that staff can hold more than one teacher status of those three. For any teacher who's taken up the first position since qualifying in the last 12 months, even if they're not employed as a teacher, you need to record the qualified teacher status route. If you've got information in there from last year's submission, then that will be collected again. But it's certainly required for anybody taking their first position since qualifying during the last 12 months. In the qualifications area, record the class of degree in the first and second subject qualified, and record if you have verified those qualifications by looking at their certificates. On the employment details tab, if you're primarily employed as a teacher, click the teaching staff box. We need to enter a teacher number for all staff who have one, and just check the employment dates for accuracy. Make sure you've got an employment start and, if appropriate, a leaving date in there as well. Anybody with a leaving date prior to the 1st of September 2017 will be included in your return. Okay, anything to add there, Helen? Hey, cheers, I got a badge. Right, subject mappings, right? So if you've got secondary school, secondary age children, it's going to collect information about the curriculum load for each member of teaching staff. It does that with reference to the timetable. But in secondary schools, you can give your subjects any code you want. And what you need to do is to map the codes that you've used in SIMS with the DFE's approved list of subject areas. Now, it's a dirty, great big long list, but it's simply a matter of going tools, set up subjects, and using the little mapping thing there to select a DFE subject code from a drop-down for each code, a subject code, which appears on the timetable. Hopefully that's clearish. So what it will do then is report against the DFE subject code rather than the ones you're using in school. I know, but listen, mate, other people, fabulous video. I could go viral. Anyway, you know. Right, service agreements. This is I pigging hate this. It's pigging complicated, right? This is almost, this is almost like recording the full contract details, right? But because the workforce census collects information for anybody providing regular service, it might well be you've got people in school being paid to be there, but not through your payroll. You don't have a direct contract with them. Maybe it's a third-party organisation. So if these staff are not paid through payroll, you've got to enter them to SIMS with a service agreement in order to include them within the return. And basically what you'll need to do is to ensure that the member of staff is entered to SIMS and the eligible for SWR is ticked. The same level of data that you're going to enter for any other member of staff needs to be in for them. You've then got to record a service agreement in their contract area, if you will, in the employment details area of the person record. So we've got to record a service start and end date, map it to a school workforce census post type. We've got to say the service type, so what type of body you've got a service agreement with, the full-time equivalence for that person, how many weeks a year they work, how many hours a week they work, the annual salary equivalent, unless you're just paying a day rate for that person to be there. Any additional payments amounts. We've got the latest pay review that needs to be recorded if they've been there that long, and a role for that member of staff. What I'm going to suggest if you've got a service agreement to enter, or if you've got any doubt whatsoever, please just log a call with the desk or request a remote support session, and we'll be only too happy to help to make sure you get this element of the return right, because if it's going to go wrong, this is the place. Okay, so that's getting ready. So if you've done all that, you should then be ready to create the return. So to create the return, it's the usual sort of routine, statutory return, school workforce census. File set 1006 should be good for the return. Indeed, 1005 would be as well. We're not aware that the DfE are about to produce any further file sets. One thing to make sure of is that the workforce census folder, that's where you're going to store all this information in an unencrypted format, is specified in that area. So you're going to record all sorts of information about staff. So please make sure that access to that area is controlled, because anybody with access to the area can just double click the files and see everything they contain. Okay. You can also specify a message for reports, so you can have your own little piece of text at the top of any reports that you produce from this process that says, eyes only, or don't show, leave it on the bus, or whatever it is you want to put in that particular security message. Once you've configured your report, it's create a new census return, and then it's on to entering the census level items, similar to a pupil return. For secondary schools, what we need to do is calculate all details. This will gather together information from the timetable about how many hours all the teaching assistants and teachers are spending on each subject, and to which curriculum years. That information can be directly edited on that panel. You can recalculate all details if required, but basically it's likely if you haven't put your teaching assistants on the timetable, they'll need to be added into the classes. Vacancies on census day. So what they're looking for is all types of teacher vacancies, from classroom teachers to head teachers, and record them if you have tried to fill them but they've not been filled on census day, or maybe you're just waiting for the person to arrive in school following an appointment. Any vacancies on census day need to be recorded there together with the category of post, and whether you've temporarily filled it and whether you've advertised that post also. Occasional teachers on census day, so this is on the 8th, or if the 8th is anomalous for some reason, then the next normal teaching day. We're looking for a number of occasional teachers with qualified status, without qualified teacher status, and where you don't know whether they're qualified or not. Anything you're tied on that one, Helen? Cool, it's easy, isn't it? Then you've got your agency and third-party support staff. This is just a head count of occasional support staff who were not directly employed by the school or the LA on census day. LA appointed staff, so if you happen to have the educational psychologist working for the LA in school on that day, then you wouldn't include them in this area because they'll appear on the authority's return. But you might put people like contract cleaners, nurses employed by the Primary Care Trust, outsourced ICT technicians, and so on. People who are normally in school during a typical week, you would put them in that box there, and it's simply a head count. Is that right, Helen? Cheers, mate. Right, so once you've added that additional information to the census return, it's a case of create and validate. So as with the pupil census, you've got a create and validate button. You click that, it checks the information you're about to submit. You'll get the usual sort of failures and queries. Failures must be dealt with. Queries will probably require a note. So when you're producing the census return, you get the option to put some notes on it and say, I know about this one, I've checked that one. It might well say doing a partial return, you haven't designated a head teacher. The usual errors and queries, the errors and validation report, or whatever that document's called, is up on the website. So refer to that, give us a call if you can't get rid of any errors. You then run off summary and detail report, sharing school as appropriate, make sure that you're happy that the information you're about to provide to the DFE is as you would want it to be. And once it is, it's simply a case of authorizing the return. You click the authorize button, and as with the pupil census, this converts the UNA file into an XML file, puts it in the folder specified in the browse window, and you can then transfer that information, that file, to the local authority or upload it to collect yourselves as appropriate. Now then, in terms of submission, arrangements vary based on your circumstance. Academies will upload the partial return to collect themselves, and then they'll also upload another file directly from their payroll or HR service. We'll use collect functionality to merge the two halves of the return. There's full guidance to it on the, we've linked to it from the OSMIS website, and it's basically a case of, anybody who matches exactly, it'll just marry the two halves of the data together. Anybody who slightly differs, then it might well say, is this the same person as this? And it matches on 3 or 4 criteria. It's quite sophisticated. But there are full tools to amend your submission directly onto the Collect website. Those of you in voluntary aided, voluntary controlled and maintained schools will vary. If you subscribe to Authority Payroll, then Blackburn and Darwin schools will upload the XML to local authority using Perspective Lite. And if you've got any queries on that, by all means, mail the school HR team at blackburn.gov.uk. And in Trafford, the Trafford schools will upload the XML to the LA using Fronter. There's an additional request from the LA team. So they're asking that the Trafford primary schools who subscribe to their service will fill in this little form that says the school name, the email address, and just confirm that they've managed to verify that the records match. And they also want to know the name of the Senko. And inquiries on Trafford returns will go to HR Shared Services MI. That's even catchier, at gss.co.uk. Okay, so that's the end of the show. Susan's just popped up with one. She's done driver 1, failed 5 queries. Queries about contracts, but fails about qualification code is missing. There you go. And Jacqueline's already logged a call for you, Susan. That's a fabulous service. Right. What I propose to do now is just go through the same sort of thing again. In fact, I don't think I will. What I'm going to do is assume that we've gone focus person staff. Okay, and gone through the members of staff. If we want to include them in return, then we keep that tick in there. If not, take the tick out. That will exclude them from all aspects of the skilled workforce census return. Okay, so you might want to just step through the staff, make sure that's there. All the information that I've referred to, legal forename, legal surname, middle names, previous names, date of birth, ethnicity, gender, and so on. I'll go in there, professional details tab. We've got these 3 new tick boxes. Notice that the old qualified teacher status hasn't been transferred. I need to retick that this year for qualified teacher and record the route, particularly for any person who's taken up the first employment in the last 12 months. I need to record the qualifications. So from the big, degree, master's degree in subjects, right? So basically select the first and second subjects from that list there, complete that area, employment details, qualified teacher status, teacher number needs to go in, tick the box if they're a member of the teaching staff, and so on. Once we've done all that, it's a matter of making sure we have imported the latest file set. If you haven't, then you haven't done your census yet, and you would go routine, statutory return, schoolwork. Right, here we go, tools. statutory return tools, and school workforce census settings. Right? I haven't mentioned this bit. It was supposed to be on the slides. Still. Right. If you're doing a partial return, then you would need to deselect contract details, absences, which will come from the authority system or the payroll system, and allow editing of base pay. Those three should be unchecked. If you have service agreements, that is arrangements with third party to pay people, right, you pay them, they pay the people to be there, then you need to enter that and put a tick in there to collect those. If not, you can take the tick out. Okay. So once you've set those up, you can then go to the routines menu, statutory returns, school workforce census. I'm going to create a new census. I think, yes, I'm logged into a secondary school here. So the first thing I do is collect all details. So it's calculating all the details now, and you'll see what it's done. It's got a list of all the members of staff in my school, the subjects they teach, and for how many hours during a week, and the curriculum year to which they teach that stuff. Okay. Any of this can be edited. So let's say this person now does 15 hours of that. Job done. Nobody's going to challenge it. Just need to make sure that it correctly reflects what goes on in school. Vacancies on census day. We simply click new there. We've got post name is going to be, I'm going to say the deputy head. Pick a subject that they would normally be engaged in. Sorry, boss. Full time. All right. That one. I don't know. Temporary filled. Yes, somebody's acting up, and we have advertised. Yeah. So you'd add your vacancies in that sort of way with a bit more care. Occasional teachers. So these you supply people who happen to be on the day. And let's say I've got 2 supplying on the day because we've got a bit of flu knocking about. And agency of third-party support staff. Pick the category of staff. So let's say we're employing an ICT technician from ICT is us, and there's one of those people. Click save, and all that's done then. So all we need to do now is click create and validate. It runs through, checks the information to see that it's all complete. Duplicate return description found. Sorry about that. You won't get this in school. I always say that. So what I need to do is give it a name. I can't give it a name. Oh, there it is. Look. Right, version 2. I'm going to do this again this afternoon, so hope I get it right. Create and validate that one. I'm creating and validate the other one now. But you get the idea. Thanks. Right, so it's now applying the validation rules. It's currently the UNA file in that folder. Here we can see we've got a series of failures which we need to deal with in a similar way to the way we do with pupils. I've got an ethnicity missing here for Adrian Blacker. I click through that. It takes me through to the personal information for that person, and I record the ethnicity of Mr. Blacker. Okay, and query, and basically errors and queries. Yeah. Detailed reports, there's a range of detailed reports you can run off just to check the information you've got is the way it should be. BIF, and you've got a summary report there to give the leadership team a potted picture of the information you're about to submit as part of the workforce census. Once everything is as it should be, you can then authorize the return and confirm that you've got authorization to authorize. And any additional text that you might want to put in there to share with the payroll provider if that's where it's going. Click continue, and that's now created an XML file in the location that's specified, and also gives me a copy of all of the detailed reports. Those are now actually stored on the SIM system. And I can now find that authorized return in the file location that was specified. And I didn't make a note of it, but it'll be in, is it the 17th today? Right, it's that one then. So that's the file that would be uploaded to the payroll provider if they're uploading to collect for me, or indeed that's the file I would upload to collect if I was an academy. Ooh, right. So, any questions, any queries? How's it been for you guys? How are we doing? Maybe I should edit this. This will be in the DVD extras, by the way. Any queries, Susan? Anybody else? How did I do? Helen, anything to add to that? It's not hard, is it? Said Dave. Helen's being quiet now. Dumbfounded. Okay, so if there's no further questions, right, don't forget, do keep in touch. Don't struggle with anything. Our team of industry experts are waiting for your call. So please, wish you all the best for Census, and thank you very much for your attendance this morning. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Cheers now. Bye-bye.